Moving on to our second album of the day, we have Power Up by AC/DC. It is 12 songs, 41 minutes long. It is their first album in about 5, 6 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly surprised that they made an album because one of the members died in 2017. One of the brother guitarists, I cannot think of his name. I can see his face with long, straight black hair, but
Yeah.
whatever. He passed away in 2017. When they did their last tour, I know that Axl Rose literally had to replace the lead singer because the doctor told the lead singer, if you do not get out of this tour right now, you will be deaf. you leave.
That's Malcolm Young, who was the person you're
Malcolm
talking
Young,
about.
there we go. Because Agnes Young is the other guitarist, but Agnes Young had to leave the tour because he was suffering from dementia. So he was replaced by someone else on the tour. The drummer didn't even show up because the drummer had some arrests and some other instances and was on house arrest, so there was that. So it's like there wasn't even AC/DC performing at that point. It's just Axl Rose and co. And you don't want to just watch Axl Rose on stage fucking around for for an hour and a half.
When you said Axl Rose and Co., I literally just pictured the Fox News show Varney and Co. But like with the
Axl
entire
Rose.
AC/DC crew.
Both Axl Rose instead. Time to die. But I mean, Axl Rose, it would be maybe the only artist that could kind of do AC/DC because his voice is also shitty, so he could kind of do that. But anyways, that's a different tangent. Moving on to the music itself, just honestly shocked that they were able to make a new album. It's just tried and true AC/DC. It's like the most rocky thing I've heard in a long time too. It's like it's okay.
It's Rocky Rockerson, but it's just like it's bestowed upon us on the glorious day, the like second Sunday of November, is the term, like the Thor's sword, of which we use from moment to moment on Audioface podcast, known as Uncle Rock.
Also known as, this is the epitome of Uncle Rock right here. It's nothing offensive though. It's nothing horrible, but it's like this sounds so much just. This, like, you can put this on and be like, this could be in 1985. This could be the release after Back in Black, and it'd be fine.
The only reason why this sounded like this literally sounded like a cut and paste, like could have been released back then in the like late 80s, early 90s. The only thing that honestly tripped me up on that is because I've listened to a lot of AC/DC back from that era, and hearing it recorded with like modern
stuff,
is like actually a trippy thing because there's no like of the crackles and some of the other stuff that you hear, like the minor imperfections from recording from that era. I think they're make it kind of warm sounding and nice, but you kind of don't get that here. That's the kind of weird thing about it, but the rest is like, again, like not amazing. AC/DC.
Realize is a solid opener song. I think it like puts you in and you're like, wow, okay, yeah, this is definitely them. It's tried and true AC/DC into that. But it basically just picks that level and it stays at it more or less like the whole album, where it's just unapologetically rock and it just keeps going over and over and over again, which is like,
it's not even trying to do anything slightly differently, but like almost as a stance, like as the course. It's like, of course we're not going to do anything differently. We're AC goddamn DC. We're not going to like mess with our sound because that's what the people like it for.
They're in their, I mean, Agnes is in his mid 60s. The lead singer is definitely in his mid 70s by now for sure. The drummer's got to be in his 60s as well. So these guys have been pumping music for, they started in the 70s, so it's crazy that they still are around. But it's nothing crazy. It's nothing wild. If you are a big fan of AC/DC, you'll like it. But anyone else who's like a passive fan or anybody who just likes rock music, whatnot, you'll find some of these songs enjoyable. But the whole album, it will get monotonous after a while for you. Basically, I'm glad it's only 12 songs. It is like the perfect length it needs to be because anything longer would have just dragged on way too much.
I'd even say it's like 5 minutes too long.
And maybe as a song too long. Maybe you could have got one of the middle songs and got rid of those and did it, because I like the ending song, Code Red. I think it's a decent, solid song, but it's all right.
Yeah, I'd say like when we're talking about around the middle, there's like a realm around Witch's Spell, Demon Fire, Wild Reputation. That I think you have some good songs that kind of thematically go together, and it's like very much like rock and roll music. And I appreciate them for doing that, and I appreciate them for like sticking to the sound to the extent that they can through all of the years as they exist. But like we do this podcast and have done this podcast about so much different that is in rock music that like the people who like took AC/DC and made it different are now blasé because there's a whole generation of artists who have like made the generation after AC/DC sound different. So much so that like we are now at another generation. We're on the cusp of the artists who are making that third iteration off of AC/DC different. So like it's such like, for better, you can see like the DNA that is in all of like rock music, because this is like the great grandparent that still exists on the chain. For worse, the family's so big now. There's so much more and better to listen to that you can go out there and do so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the old thing with me with Led Zeppelin. I'm glad Led Zeppelin, I mean, obviously it's because John Bonham passed, but I'm glad they stopped where they did, because they're in that time capsule, and what they did was amazing. They didn't need to do anything else other than that.
Yeah.
But with like other bands that keep pushing around, I mean, Foo Fighters is another one that when we reviewed their album, it was just like, holy crap, this is the most Uncle Rock thing. And they actually just released a single last week too, which we will talk about at some point. I'm sure I'll bring it up. I just remember that right now. But it's nothing wild. So arbitrary scale this week is
Trump administration officials who have caught COVID.
Yes.
I'm going to make this that story that came out, like 100 Secret Service officials tested positive.
Okay. I was going to say this is Hope Hicks, who probably started it all. The first one was Hope Hicks, and then everybody else just started dropping off like flies.